So we kind of have a love-hate relationship with this parable of the talents or the gold bags. For many of us, it has been used as the gold standard for stewardship campaigns. Pastors, we like to stand in the pulpit and tell our congregations that God has given them talents, as we cleverly utilize the English pun to refer to our singing voices, our accounting skills, or for our knack of baking. And that we must use these skills to increase the church's ministry. We like the version of the story where everyone gets a gold star for effort and the good and faithful servant enter into a vague, defined celestial joy. But then we're hit with the end of the story, the outer darkness, the weeping and gnashing of teeth. Suddenly, this doesn't feel like a Hallmark card about using your gifts. It feels like a high-stakes corporate performance review conducted by a psychopathic CEO. If you don't produce 100% on investment, you're cast into the void. This difficult word of Jesus creates a tension in our modern sensibilities. We want to believe in a God of radical grace, but this master looks like a predatory capitalist. So as we continue in our Lenten study of the difficult words of Jesus by Dr. Amy Jill Levine, she invites us to stop domesticating this text. She pushes us to look past the Sunday school metaphors and see the historical, Jewish, and deeply human reality of this story. She reminds us that a talent was not a coin you'd find in your sofa cushion. It was roughly 6,000 denarii, representing nearly 20 years of labor for an average worker. When the master was handing out 5, 2, and 1 talents, he isn't just giving them tips. He's handing them the equivalent of a multiple lifetimes of wealth. In our modern terms, he is handing one man a small fortune and another the literal empire's treasury. This isn't a story about being busy for God. This is a story about what happens when we are entrusted with something so valuable that it terrifies us. Dr. Levine asks us a piercing question. What if that third servant wasn't cast out because he was lazy, but because he was paralyzed by a specific kind of fear? And what is that fear? That is the fear that the world is harsh, scarce, and a punishing place. That is exactly what is currently poisoning our national soul. Now, to truly understand the difficult nature of this word, we have to look at the third servant through the lens of the first century Jewish life. Now, Dr. Levine points out a crucial historical detail that we often miss under rabbinical law at the time. If someone entrusted you with money and you buried it in the ground, you were legally absolved of any liability if it was stolen. Burying was the safest possible move. It was the gold standard of risk management. The third servant wasn't being a rebel or a slacker. He was being a strict legalist. He was following the rules of safety first. He could return to his master and say, look, here's your property, exactly as you left it, not a penny lost. I followed the law and I kept your deposit pure. But Jesus' parables almost always function as a critique of those who prefer purity over people and safety over service. The master in this story doesn't want his money back in the original packaging. He wants to see that it has been exposed to the world. Dr. Levine notes that the servant's failure is rooted in his perception of the master, because if we listen to his defense, Lord, I knew you to be a harsh man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid. and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Now, here is the theological heart of the matter. Is the servant right about his master? Most traditional interpretations assume that the master is a stand-in for God. If the master is God and the master is harsh, then we're serving a God who demands blood from a stone. But if we follow Levine's scholarship, we see that the servant's words describe a predator, not a provider. If you believe God is a bean counter waiting for you to trip up, you will never take a risk for the gospel. You will bury your grace because you are terrified of losing it. You will live a life of don'ts rather than do's. You will follow the rules perfectly, bury your talent in the dirt of tradition, and wait for the end, only to find that a life lived in fear is itself a form of outer darkness. The servant's fear became a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because he feared a harsh master, he created a harsh reality for himself. When we look at the landscape of the United States and the wider world today, we see this third servant syndrome playing out on a massive scale. We are a nation of immense talents, unprecedented wealth, staggering diversity, and intellectual capital that our ancestors could never have dreamed of. Yet we are currently obsessed with burying those talents out of an all-consuming fear. And this is where the economy of scarcity comes into play. Despite all of our technological advances, we operate from a mindset of profound scarcity. We see the master, the economy, the market, the futures as harsh. So we hoard rather than invest in the common good. We bury our resources in gated communities, in offshore accounts, and in private silos. Because we fear there isn't enough to go around, we would rather bury our talents in the ground of self-preservation than risk them on the return of a healthy, educated, and cared-for populace. We have forgotten that in the kingdom, resources are like manna. When they rot, when they are hoarded, but multiplied when shared. Then there are the walls of our algorithms. In our social and political life, we have buried the talents of civil discourse. Because we view the other side as a harsh master who wants to destroy our way of life. We dig digital holes. Our social media algorithms act like a dirt pile on top of our empathy. We retreat into our echo chambers, digital bunkers where we don't have to risk the investment of listening to someone who disagrees with us. We have buried the talent of the community because we are afraid that if we engage with the other, we might lose our own credentials. We also are dealing with the isolation of the individual. Right now, we are facing what many are calling the loneliness epidemic. This is our modern outer darkness. We have all the tools for connection, yet we have buried our vulnerability. We are afraid that if we show our true selves, our talents, and our weaknesses, the world will be harsh to us. So we stay in the shadows. We live in the darkness of our own screens, weeping over our loss of connection and gnashing our teeth on the hardness of a world we refuse to enter. But Dr. Levine provides a brilliant shift in how we understand the outer darkness. In traditional Sunday school imagery, this is a fiery pit where God sends the bad people, like a cosmic bouncer. But Levine suggests that the outer darkness is the natural consequences of self-exclusion. Consider the first two servants. They enter into the joy of their master. And what is that joy? Well, in the context of the parable, it is the joy of the marketplace. It's the messy, loud, risky, vibrant world of human interaction, trade, and growth. It is the place where you might get cheated, where you might lose the money, but where you are alive and together. And the third servant is cast out into the outer darkness because he has already spent his entire life there. He chose the darkness of the hole over the light of the market. He chose the silence of the dirt over the noise of the community. When we refuse to engage with the world, when we refuse to risk our hearts, our reputation, or our money for the sake of justice, we are already in the outer darkness. We are weeping because we are lonely, and we are gnashing our teeth because we are bitter. The darkness isn't a punishment God inflicts on us from the outside. It's a spiritual condition we cultivate when we refuse to risk the talent of the lives for the sake of others. The kingdom of heaven, as Jesus described it, is not a safe space. It's a space of holy speculation. The first two servants had to take those talents into the world. They had to trade. They had to trust strangers. They had to navigate a world that didn't guarantee a return. In the economy of God, the only way to keep your grace is to give it away. The only way to save your life is to lose it in the marketplace of human need. Dr. Levine highlights that the master doesn't actually need the money. He's already wealthy. But what he wants is participation. He wants the servants to be daring and to be out there as he is. The sin of the third servant wasn't that he didn't make enough money. It was that he did nothing. He sat on his hands. He protected his own purity and his own deposit at the expense of the master's mission. He preferred the certainty of the whole to the possibility of the party. In our current world, we often think that faithfulness means keeping things exactly as they are. We want to preserve the church of the 1950s or the politics of the 1990s or the safety of our childhoods. But faithfulness is this parable is synonymous with the risk. If you aren't risking anything for the gospel, you aren't actually participating in it. So how do we unearth our talents in a world that tells us to stay safe in our holes? I want to challenge you this week with some specific investments. First, we need the investment of vulnerability, the currency of truth. We have buried our true selves behind curated social media profiles and polite, fine, thanks responses. This week, unearth your talents of honesty. Risk a real conversation. Tell someone you are struggling. Tell someone you need them. The outer darkness is broken the moment we allow ourselves to be seen in the light. Second, participate in the investment of empathy, the currency of trust. In a polarized world, empathy is a high-risk investment. It feels dangerous to understand someone who you've been told is your enemy, but do it anyway. Reach out to the neighbor whose yard sign might make you angry. Not to argue, but to trade stories. Risk your ego for the sake of relationship. That is how we turn the outer darkness of polarization into the joy of a communal table. And lastly, take time for the investment of justice, the currency of time. We are often told to be wise and discerning, which is frequently used as an excuse for being stagnant and inactive. If you see a hole in your community, whether it be the lack of food, lack of housing, or even just the lack of hope, don't guard your resources. Spend them. Risk your comfort. Put your talents into the hands of those who are suffering. The master reaps where he does not sow, which means the kingdom of God is often growing in the very places we've written off as waste. The parable of the talents ends with a party for some and a void for others. But as Dr. Levine's scholarship helps us see, the door to the party is rarely locked from the outside. It is locked from the inside by those who are too afraid to come out of their holes. We live in a world that is desperately trying to pull us into the outer darkness of cynicism, fear, and isolation. We are told to watch our backs, protect our own, and wait for the storm to pass. But the Master is not coming back to see how well we hid. The Master is coming back to see how much we loved. When we look at the landscape of the world, the conflicts in distant lands, the tension in our own streets, the temptation to dig a hole has never been stronger. But the gospel is not a call to be safe. It's a call to be fruitful. The joy of the Master is not a retirement home for the cautious. It's a celebration for the bold. It is found in the market that's messy, loud, unpredictable space where we risk ourselves for the sake of another. The Master has given us a staggering deposit of grace. He doesn't want it back in its original packaging, clean and untouched by the world. He wants to see the dirt of the marketplace on it. He wants to see the wear and tear of a life spent on others. He wants to see that we were more afraid of doing nothing than we are of doing it right. Don't die with your gold in the dirt. Don't let your talent for love, for justice, or for community be buried by headlines of the day. Stop viewing God as a harsh judge and start viewing him as a host of a feast who is currently waiting for you to bring your investment to the table. Take the risk. Invest the grace. Break the soil of your fear and step out of the shadows and into the light of the feast. For it is only in the risking of the gift that we finally find the giver. Amen.